Hi everyone, so this is the B2C2P2 Foundation Past Paper 4 run through. Remember you have all these equations in front of your booklet, so please use them, particularly in the physics section. But the first question is on food webs and biology. So there's a food web, and the woodlouse and earwig are in the same trophic level, and it asks what is a trophic level. So that's the position of the organism in the food chain or web, or where the animal food plant or the animal food is in the food chain or web, or you could say the feeding level. So any of those will get that one mark. The woodlouse and earwig live in the same habitat. Food is one resource they compete for. Write down one other resource they may compete for. So any of these: water, shelter, or places to breed. Obviously you can't say food because that's already been said in the question. The ground beetle is a predator of the earwig and millipede. Explain what would happen to the population of earwigs in this food web if all the millipedes were killed by a disease. So you could say that population would decrease, but that wouldn't get you the mark. The 2 marks are saying because the beetle has lost a food source, and so will feed on more of the earwigs. So that's what you need to put there for those 2 marks. You could also say that because there would be less competition. Well, if you said it would increase, which would also actually be something you could say, because there would be less competition for food as the millipedes won't be eating it. So 2 directions to go with in that question, and as long as your explanation backs up your answer, then you get those 2 marks. Look at one food chain in this web. A survey is done to find the numbers in the food chain. The results are shown in the table. Calculate the mean number for dead leaves. So the mean number is adding up the 3 numbers and dividing by how many there are, so that's 3. So if you add them up, that's 96, and then divide by 3, and that equals 32. So 32 will get you those 2 marks there. Use the completed table to help you decide which of the statements are true for this food chain, and put ticks in boxes next to 2 correct statements. Now, never leave this blank. If you're not sure, then at least have a guess at it. But the 2 that you should have ticked were that a normal shaped pyramid numbers is produced. Now you know that because if you look at the numbers, you can see that the number of each one as you go up the food chain decreases, so you get a normal looking pyramid of numbers. And that the energy flow from the sun supports this food chain. The reason you know that is because the top of the food chain is a plant, so therefore the sun supports, will give that plant the energy it needs. The plants in this food web are dead. They are not eaten by the animals, they decay. Name a type of organism that causes decay. So either bacteria or fungi, we get that mark. And during decay, nitrogen compounds are broken down. What is the percentage of nitrogen in the atmosphere? And that is 78%. Which is a number you have to know. Next question is about pollution. Look at the diagrams there. Indicator species used to show levels of water pollution. Which 2 of the indicator species show characteristics found only in insects? So that's the mayfly larva and the caddis fly larva. So those are the 2 that you need to put down in order to get those 2 marks. Look at a picture of a stonefly larva. This is another indicator species used to show levels of water pollution. Stonefly larvae live underneath stones in fast-flowing streams. Stonefly larvae have adapted legs that end in small hooks and the body is flattened. Explain how these adaptations help it survive in fast-flowing streams. So the hooks help it anchor, or they help it to not get swept away. Or we could say the hooks allow it to catch food easier as well. You could say all those things. That's for 1 mark. And the flattened body allows it to shelter under stones or not get swept away. Or you could say the flattened body allows it to hide in the stones to hide from predators. But you have to make sure you can't just put help it anchor or help or not get swept away. You've got to put the hooks help it anchor. So you've got to link the adaptation to what helps it do. Okay, so this next question is a 6-mark question, so please mark this yourself using the guidance online on the Blue Coat Science Google site, and then ask your teacher if you're unsure whether you've marked it correctly. The picture shows a right whale. Biologists have measured the population of right whales in an area of the North Atlantic during 5 separate months. They also measured the amount of food available in the area. Results were plotted on the graph. Look at the number of whales in September and August. How many times bigger is a relative number of right whales in September compared to August? So, August, you can see that the number of Wales is about 0.25, so there's 0.3, but it's between 0.2 and 0.3, so it's 0.25. Remember, the Wales is the grey one. And then in September, you've got 1. So 1 is 4 times as many as 0.25. Look at the patterns in the data, explain the change in the numbers of right whales found in the area of the North Atlantic between August and October. So, first mark saying there's an increase in, from August to September, an increase in food causes an increase, an increase in food causes an increase in whales, and then September, October, a decrease in food causes a decrease in whales. So those 2 marks are there. So August, September, an increase in food causes an increase in whales, and then September to October, a decrease in food causes a decrease in whales. Over millions of years, right whales evolved to be very slow-moving filter feeders. They had no predators. Over the past 1,000 years, humans have changed their environment, suggest reasons why the right whales are in danger of becoming extinct in their current environment. So any 2 of these, you could say there's less food, you could say they're being hunted, you could say there's pollution, or you could say that the whales have not adapted or have been unable to change. So on to the chemistry section now. This question is about fertilizers. Ammonium sulfate is used as a fertilizer. The formula for ammonium sulfate is that right number of different elements in ammonium sulfate. So elements are the number of different capital letters, essentially. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 different capital letters. The reason why I say that is because a symbol for an element has to have a capital letter first, and then if there are any letters after that, then there'll be lowercase letters. So if you just count the number of capital letters in a formula, that should give the number of elements. The right number of atoms. Now, atoms are the total number of each element all added together. But this one has brackets in it, so you've got to ensure that you multiply anything inside the brackets by 2 here. So there are 2 n's, because there's 1 inside the bracket, but there's 2 lots of the bracket. There's 8 h's, because there's 4 inside the bracket, but there's 2 lots of that bracket. There's 1 s, because that's now outside the bracket, and there's 4 oxygens. So that all adds up. If you add up those numbers, that adds up to 15. Chloe makes some ammonium sulfate. The alkali she uses ammonium solution. What acid does she use? So the acid is linked to this sulfate, the second part of the name. So to make a sulfate, you need sulfuric acid. If you spelt it pH, that's fine, instead of the F. Write about 1 benefit and 1 problem of using fertilizers. So benefit is that it increases crop yield or increases the food supply, or it helps the crops grow faster. And then a problem is that it causes death of animals that live in water. Or you could put the special name for that, which is eutrophication, or you could say it pollutes water supplies. So any of those, we get that 2nd mark there. So this next question is a 6-mark question, so please mark this yourself using the mark scheme on the Google site, and then ask your teacher if you're unsure if you've marked it correctly. Next question, Sam makes some copper. Sam heats copper oxide with carbon. And copper and carbon dioxide are made. Write a balanced symbol equation. So you've got first thing to do is write out the symbols. So you've got copper oxide reacting with carbon, and then on the product side you've got copper and you've got carbon dioxide. And to balance this, first thing you need to do is balance the oxygen. So you've got 2 on this side and you've got 1 on this side. So you need a 2 in front of the CuO, and then now you've got 2 coppers here. So you need a 2 in front of the copper, and that's now balanced. You get 1 mark for the writing out, and then 1 mark for balancing. So make sure that you write it out, even if you're not sure how to balance it. Look at the diagram, it shows the apparatus he uses. Sam measures the mass of the test tube and its contents before and after heating. The mass of the test tube and its contents decreases. Suggest why. And that's because of the carbon dioxide given off, or you could say there's a gas given off. You wouldn't have to necessarily say it's carbon dioxide. So that mark there is saying there's carbon dioxide given off. Next question, the copper Sam makes is impure. Look at the diagram, it shows the apparatus used to purify the copper. What is the name of the process used to purify the copper? That is electrolysis. And then recycling copper is cheaper than extracting copper from its ore. Explain why. So there's 2 marks here, but it can have any 2 of these 3. You can say it reduces problems of disposing the copper. You could say it uses less energy. And you could say that copper ore needs a lot of processing to make copper, whereas recycling does not. Molly investigates passing electric current through sodium chloride solution. Look at the apparatus she uses. Look at the list. It shows the particles in sodium chloride solution. Which particle is a molecule? So the molecule is the uncharged one there, so H2O. And then chlorine is made in this experiment. What is the test for chlorine gas? So the test, you've got to use litmus paper. So that's the first mark. Litmus paper, sorry. And then that bleaches or goes white for your 2 marks. Ammonia is made from nitrogen and hydrogen in the Haber process. Look at the equation of this reaction. What does that symbol mean? So if you put reversible, that gets you the mark there, or the reaction can go both ways, or it goes backwards and forwards. Any of those will get you that mark. The percentage of ammonia changes the temperature and pressure change. Look at the graph. Look at the graph for 350 Celsius. So that's this one here. What is the percentage of ammonia at 400 atmospheres? So at 400, you could say it's about 50. But you could say 50 or 51 for that. And then there are many costs in making ammonia. One of these is the cost of energy, i.e. the gas and electricity. Write about some of the other costs of making ammonia. So you could say that there's the cost of the starting materials. You could say the labour costs or wages. You could say the equipment. You could say the plant or the cost of rent or the cost of rates. You could say the cost of the catalyst. You could say the transportation costs. So any 3 of those, we get those 3 marks. So the last section is the physics section. So the first question is about nuclear radiation. So complete the diagram to show the penetrating power of alpha and beta radiation. Remember, alpha sources are stopped by a few sheets of paper, but beta sources are stopped by aluminium. So both of those needed for that 1 mark. Describe how to handle radioactive materials safely. So any 2 of these, you could say you need to wear protective clothing, you need to use tongs or keep your distance, you need to have a short exposure time, use a shield or lead-lined containers, direct it away from people. So any of those, we get those 2 marks, or any 2 of those rather. Nuclear radiation can be beneficial or harmful. Tick the correct box next to each statement to show if the radiation is beneficial or harmful. So alpha radiation used in smoke detectors, well, that's beneficial. Gamma radiation used as a tracer, that's beneficial. Radiation causing ionization in healthy body cells, that's harmful. And radioactive waste from nuclear power stations is also harmful. So if you get 2 or 3 of those right, that's 1 mark. If you get all 4 right, that is 2 marks. This next question is a 6-mark question, so please mark this yourself after completing it using the mark scheme that's on the Google site, and then you can ask your teacher to check whether it's correct or not. The sun's energy produces convection currents that cause wind. Wind is used to drive turbines. Describe the advantages of wind turbines compared to a conventional coal-powered station. So first is the idea of there's renewable energy, or you could say there's no polluting waste, or you could say that crops can be grown underneath them, or they can be put at sea, or they're useful in remote locations. So any of those, 2 of those would get you those 2 marks. The people in the house are concerned about noise from the turbine. Look at the graph. Use the graph to describe how the wind turbine noise is affected by wind speed. So this is simply, as wind speed increases, the noise in decibels increase as well. So try and just use, if you're unsure how to label these, just use the labels on the axes. So as the wind speed in meters per second increases, the noise in decibels also increases, as you can see where those dots are. The mean wind speed in this area is 5 meters per second. The maximum wind speed in this area is usually less than 15 meters per second. Explain using data from the graph why the people in the house do not normally need to worry about the noise from the turbine. So this line here shows the background noise. So you can say for low speeds at 5 meters per second, actually the noise level is always below the background noise. Whereas at high speeds, above 5 or above the mean speed, then most of the time it's below background noise, but sometimes it's above. So it's not much above the background level. So that's why. So those 2 points needed those 2 marks. Kyle has a wireless computing system. Look at the information in the diagram. The monitor plugs into a 230 volt supply and uses a current of 0.5 amps. Calculate the power. So you must make sure you look at the front of the paper and use the equation for power. So that is power equals voltage times current. So that equals 230 times 0.5, which equals 115. So it's 115 watts. And then the 4 parts of the wireless computing system cost different amounts to use. Complete the list to show the cost of using the 4 parts of the computer system. One has been done for you. So the monitor is the one that costs the most. And then essentially, the more power it uses, the more it's going to cost. The desktop PC is next, then the keyboard, then the mouse. So you've got PC, then keyboard, then mouse. Next question. Increasing the use of technology has increased energy consumption. This may have contributed to global warming. People have different views about how to reduce global warming. Fatima thinks it would help if everyone changed to using low energy light bulbs. Sarah thinks the problem is so big it does not matter what individuals do. And Claire thinks that we could all reduce energy use by walking instead of driving cars. Identify 2 opposing views and describe what long-term effects each view could have on the environment. So 2 marks here. So first off is saying which ones are opposing. Could say that Fatima's or Claire's view would reduce the energy use, but Sarah's view would not reduce global warming. So the first mark is actually just saying that Fatima's or Claire's view would reduce the energy use or global warming, and that the second mark is saying that Sarah's view would not reduce global warming. And then finally, electricity is generated in power stations. Calculate the efficiency of this power station. So efficiency is the amount of useful energy given out, so that's 170,000, divided by the amount of energy put in, so that's 500,000, then times that by 100, and that gives you 34%. The generator in the power station produces an alternating current. Name the type of current a battery produces. So a battery produces direct current, or you could put DC if you wanted to. And then look at the 3 different current time graphs. Describe why all the graphs show alternating currents. So that's the idea that each graph shows values above and below 0, or the values go up and down above and below 0, or there's readings that are positive and negative, or that it flows in 2 directions. So any of those points get that 1 mark. So please add up your score now, add it to your poster, and now try the next paper, please.